All right. Yeah, this discussion is being hosted by the Movement for African Emancipation. Yeah, and I'm glad that we're able to get you guys to join us on this conversation. As listeners, be aware, the title here is "Fighting Imperialism in Africa." From Mali to Burkina Faso. And our focus is just trying to like educate ourselves and expand our knowledge on what's going on in these two countries when it comes to tackling imperialism, neocolonialism, in its various forms. And also it's also inspiring that we even have this kind of examples you get to even look at, you get, as comrades from other countries in Africa and around the world. So just please, Burkina Books, please just go on and introduce yourself, let people know what you're all about and how you can contribute to this discussion before we start.
Okay, sure. So my name is Inemesit Richardson, or Inem for short. I'm based out of Ouagadougou. Actually, the correct name is Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso. I'm currently in the Thomas Sankara Center for African Liberation and Unity, which is our revolutionary Pan-African political education center and lending library. And I'm also a cadre member of the All African People's Revolutionary Party and All African Women's Revolutionary Union. So that's just a little bit of my background. Okay, I see Prudence joined the chat. I think she's trying to get into the video.
Yeah, that's the thing. I did the invite a few times. I don't know what the issue is right now. But Conrad Obioma, please, you can go on while I figure out this.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Obi. I'm based in the U.S. and around Washington, D.C., Baltimore. I'm part of the movement for African emancipation and also a country member in the AAPRP, so the All African People's Revolutionary Party, along with
Prudence is on.
And and I guess I'll just
Okay. Conrad, Prudence, is she here?
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Yes.
Greetings, y'all.
And I'm also a cadre member of the All African People's Revolutionary Party and All African Women's Revolutionary
Party. I'm hearing the audio.
Okay, sorry guys, I don't know what's wrong. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
I'm obviously technologically challenged.
Yeah.
Okay,
Are you still in the chat?
Yeah, that's probably why. Okay. Hi guys, how are y'all doing?
Yeah, we're fine. Inemesit and Obioma, they've just introduced themselves. They've let us know, what their organizations are all about. And, just by chance, Obioma, the two of us, as you would now have realized, we're both members in MAE. You get, so it's good to speak to you, through this channel. So, Comrade Prudence, please just let us know a little about you and your organization before we kick off the conversation through and through.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I'm Prudence Itika. I was born in Cameroon, but I now reside in Canada. I am part of an organization called United African Diaspora, which is based here where I live in Calgary, Canada. And yeah, that's all about me. I'm not good at this introduction. It's so nice to see you all, though. Oh my gosh.
I'm looking at my notes here. So, Inemesit, I'll just kick off with you. With where are you currently, if I may ask?
Okay, so I am in the Thomas Sankara Center for African Liberation and Unity. So in like the library space here in Ouagadougou, which is also like the sort of bastardized colonial version is Ouagadougou, the capital city of Burkina Faso.
Okay. Since you're on the ground, and then geographically, you're the closest to Mali as well. I guess I'll just, direct this one to you so that you just give us like, a simple overview of what's like, how would you say, how would you say Mali has been dealing with, should I say, international pressure? You understand, when it comes to like French imperialism, the impact of, like US imperialism and so on. How has that country, how's the government been dealing with those pressures?
Okay, well, this is a big question. Mali is a country that has experienced some very rapid changes in its politics, its geopolitical alignments, and allegiances in the past couple of years. And a lot of it is pushed from massive grassroots mobilizations occurring on the ground. Some people kind of talk about it like this is something that just kind of happened shockingly and suddenly, like Mali just flipped a switch, but actually it's been many years in the making. I first came to the Sahel in region of Africa, so it includes Mali and Burkina and Senegal and other countries in 2018. I was not in Mali at the time, I was in Senegal, but there was a lot of cross-border sort of migration and movement. And that's when I started to realize that there was a big anti-imperialist movement emerging from the grassroots that had Pan-African leanings, at least, if not like full commitments to Pan-Africanism. And at first I noticed this was very tied to the question of economic and monetary sovereignty in the CFA franc. But within Mali, over the next year or so, around 2019 especially, there began to be large-scale mobilizations against French military intervention and French military forms of imperialism, which led to Assimi Goïta taking power over the state in Mali, which is super popularly supported on the ground, and which has led to Mali leaving the Western NATO camp and realigning itself with an international anti-imperialist camp, and as well as asserting some very Pan-African positions, pushing for a clearly Pan-African objective, things like unification with Burkina Faso. So this has had a huge impact on the politics of Burkina Faso. It's really changed the entire political climate of the Sahel. It's changed, I think, I mean, just like the horizon just feels very different. Like it seems like we are organizing just on a different sort of level right now in the whole region. And a lot of it was because of Mali, which was the first country to where anti-imperialists took power over the state in recent times. Long story short, I'll just say last thing, like I think it's important for people to realize that there are constant mobilizations in Mali as well as Burkina that are ongoing in support and in favor of Assimi Goïta in Mali as well as Ibrahim Traoré in Burkina. So there's an ongoing, like before the protests were massive against France, they still are, but now they're also massive protests to declare constant sort of long-term support for these two governments that are in place.
Man, nice one, I beg. As in that, it's good to know that. It's good to know that not just the government, itself, that's with its military strength and so on, are like confronting the French to the degree that they can. You understand? But the people, there's what do I need to say? Like there's popular support. You understand, for what's going on, and the people themselves are even organizing. Just as you said. So this is as in it's I can even say that it's kind of shocking, you get, to be observing these kind of things, in real time. Understand? I'll bring it up again for us, also around the continent and in the diaspora, to even be aware that this type of things are, happening in this way. So, thank you for that, man. I would just move on, like, Prudence. This one, I'm directing it at you, and what I'm thinking about here is like propaganda. How like the media is not, mainstream media especially, is not even helping us at all. So I was aware that Mali had pushed out is it RFI and France 24 or so. Yes, they had I think suspended their operations also because they were covering issues in a very nonsense way, as imperialists usually do. So, Prudence, I would just like you to, just tell us what you're aware of as far as like the impacts of propaganda. How the imperialists are being shifty, and how we Africans can even like take any stance against that.
Yeah, like you said, like of course, mainstream media is not helping us because it's not supposed to. Even just like the way they refer to both of the leadership in those countries, like they're very clear on the use of the word like a junta, or just to kind of delegitimize them, right? And of course, we've seen like a lot of things being written in terms of like Mali's partnership with Russia, a lot of allegations that there's a lot of killings happening, that, Russian mercenaries are working with FAMA, which is the Malian army, and like harming people. There's a lot of like attempts also to make it seem like these are like targeted kind of ethnic attacks, or saying like specific groups in Mali and in Burkina Faso are being targeted by the government, which is one of the reasons why Mali had even like started banning these different media channels. Just the way they were reporting it was just to kind of create ethnic divides within the country. Same thing in Burkina Faso. We also saw the removal of some of these like imperial media corporations. Mali also kicked out French-sponsored NGOs last year at the end of the year. That didn't really get any it didn't really get much notice, but that did happen at the end of last year. They said all French-sponsored or supported NGOs, including humanitarian ones, would be booted out because, again, we understand that these people are not there to support. They're just there to work for Macron and his terrorist government. So I think, it's really important for us, like Pan-Africanists and just Africans who even just care about our continent, to be wary of where we're getting our information. It is a lot of disinformation on both of those countries. They want us to turn against those movements. So where are we getting our information? Where are we reading about these Wagners? Is this like CNN? Like, it's not really a great source for us. Like, and I know it's really tough because both of those countries are obviously the dominant popular language that we know of is French. So it's hard for those of us who don't speak French to kind of be able to tap in with kind of more local grassroots kind of news outlets. But we can't be lazy. We have to make the effort. There are ways to be informed on what's happening in those zones, like from non-imperial news agents, and we have to make that effort. And I think those of us who speak French, like myself and Inam, we do have the responsibility to kind of communicate with the people who don't speak French, to transfer the messages, the positive messages and what is happening on the ground, to kind of help break that linguistic barrier. But yeah, don't listen to mainstream media at all. Like the mainstream media, no, like it needs to be made very clear that it just doesn't lie sometimes. It lies all of the time, and we are at a war for information. So, any type of co-signing, doesn't matter if you think it's like nuance. It's like everybody's favorite word on the internet. We don't need your nuance right now. We need you to be uncompromisingly on the side of the people in Burkina Faso and in Mali who are uncompromisingly behind their leadership.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You said something just now. The language barrier, you understand, especially like in this part of the world, the language barrier is, an issue because, like, as you said, being unable to, read in French, one might not have access to what, like people on the ground are actually, saying and writing and so on. And when it comes to like French sources, you're going to see what's coming out from all sorts of state departments around the world, and that's just imperialist line that is not telling us, what we need to know. So, Comrade Obioma, I'll just call your attention now. Just can you just add to all that's been said, all these developments that are going on, misinformation in the media about what's going on in Western Africa, and also the good parts, as Comrade Inem pointed out, where people on the ground are actually agitating and organizing themselves, you get, against all these oppressive structures. So carry on.
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the things that Prince was saying is that we're not getting full stories, and there's an emphasis on trying to paint both sides as being equal something or another. So take the example of Mali's recent constitutional referendum. The news will point out that 97% of the people voted for it and somehow say that that's indicative of it being an illegitimate referendum, because there's no way 97% of people could support something. But if you look on the ground, even the rallies that one of the main no proponents was, they rallied about 3,000 people, while outside there was a 50,000 people rally in support of the referendum. The vote alignment has been along the same lines or even higher than other participation. So even though the media will continuously try to say that the people don't support this, or that somehow what's going on in Mali is illegitimate, it's just clearly not the case in the ground. And similar things happen with Burkina Faso. It's the same thing where the stories that, because how it filters through Western media, especially those of us in English, we're just getting these one-sided narratives, or they're trying to emphasize groups that aren't really that well supported by the people. And I think one of the things is that we've also seen this in a lot of different struggles around the world. So we should be mindful of anywhere that's fighting imperialism, you'll get the same narrative, the same propping up of certain actors who are supposed to be legitimate or vying for power, when it's clearly not the case in the ground. I'm thinking most recently of like in Russia or in Iran. Like, I think both places are part of the anti-imperialist struggle, so we're seeing news and information against all anti-imperialist countries, trying to support sides that are less legitimate and trying to delegitimize the movement.
Media is such as in they are such an issue, man. They are just like standing in the way of any kind of real consciousness developing. You understand? And it's all about just twisting people's minds the other way. You know, as you said, we can just see media coverage of maybe Chinese actions, Iranian actions, Russian actions, North Korean actions. All these governments that are one way or the other, like resisting the influence of that Euro-Atlantic bloc. You understand? Governments that are trying to resist that bloc are just painted in you know, whatever way. And another thing that kind of confuses me is when we Africans in many situations don't have the patience for, let's say, like a government such as Mali or Burkina Faso. We don't have the patience to even like allow their decisions to play out, you know, just because the government's in power of the military extraction, you know, there's like that people already show how indoctrinated they are by saying, it's a dictatorship that is about to enter. They're about to take advantage of people and all this type of things, you know, without considering, you know, other contexts, you know, around. So I'll just bring it back to you. Do you have any comment on this type of thing? That's the impatience we have towards governments that are resisting.
Yeah, you know, I think the question of like the whole military government, or like, you know, we hear accusations of a military dictatorship, is just really interesting in this kind of context, because you know, Burkina Faso has a long history of military rule, and some of it has been awful, and some of it has been the most revolutionary leadership that the African continent has ever seen. I think, you know, there's deeper sort of ideological questions, and, you know, questions in terms of where people's commitments and allegiances lie, that are not just a question of, you know, if somebody's coming from the military or not. Thomas Sankara was very clear. He said that, you know, people coming out of the military are also citizens of Burkina Faso, and they're also Burkinabe, and that they should be like recognized as such. And this whole like sort of distinction, you know, we kind of need to, we shouldn't necessarily see them as a part, like away from or not a part of the people. And I think that that is the mentality here. I also want to say, you know, sometimes I think there's a lot of hypocrisy that I see kind of even on the left in terms of like the way the word democracy is being employed, which is bizarre to me sometimes, because even people who have sometimes a critical sort of analysis in regards to like maybe certain forms of like bourgeois liberal type of democracy, all of a sudden in the case of Burkina Faso and Mali seem to be like the biggest proponents for moving in that direction. You know, I have some conversations sometimes with people who like represent certain governments that are not aligned with NATO and the Western camp. And, you know, I can just say, like, for example, when I talk to certain representatives coming from Cuba, we talk a lot about how there is no one definition of democracy that the West gets to sort of employ and use against the people. And I think it's also what our comrade here was saying is very interesting. Like the Mali's referendum wasn't legitimate, and it was like you know, people claim that, you know, it's not all right that they even have the referendum. There were articles about whether or not they even have the right to exercise, something like that. And it's kind of like a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. Like, do they want us to vote or do they not want us to vote? And it's like, you know, there's no winning here, because the truth is they just don't like the sort of positions that Mali and Burkina are taking. They don't like the allyship, like the partnerships and the alliances that are forming. And so there's not really a solution. If there was to be a legitimate vote tomorrow and Goita and Traore were on the ballot and there was no external interference, I have no doubt that they would win. I mean, this is like, they're some of the most popular governments that we've seen in Africa in ages. They are, you know, but I think there's legitimate reasons why, in the midst of like a massive national security crisis, that it's not necessarily possible to move towards elections tomorrow. But, you know, I think that people are able to express their political interests and their own sort of perspective and allegiances in other ways. And I find that the governments here are very submissive to what the people's demands are. A lot of the changes that have happened are things that started out as calls on the grassroots level that picked up a lot of momentum and then were picked up by the state and implemented and became policy. So we're really in a situation where the government is like submissive to the people and is listening to what the demands are, which is just, for most of us who grew up under capitalism, colonialism, and neo-colonialism, it's just kind of unimaginable, you know? To be in a position where we're defending the government, it's just, you know, it's a different thing altogether.
Yeah. This is the okay. Commodore Pema, did you want to add something?
Oh, yeah, I could just add, it's important to also note the class character of any governments or institutions that we're noting. So, for example, a lot of the worst military-led governments have been led by sort of the admirals or the top brass of militaries. And these top brass are usually the ones who have the closest ties to the West. So either in their bank accounts or in their educational process. And these are, so in their governance, they usually also align with the West. But if we look at the class characteristics of the military in power in Burkina Faso and Mali, like Inem was saying, like these the leaders aren't of that top brass. They're usually more of the middle brass or junior officers, and these people are closer to the people on the ground, right? So of course we would expect them to be more responsive to people on the ground, because as Thomas Sankara said, they are part of the population as well.
You see, this is the thing with that should I say, kind of a passive aggressive attitude that neoliberal, you know, supporters, you know, bring up when it comes to like that definition or understanding of democracy. You get Comrade mentioned, you know, being in contact or conversation with people from, you know, Cuba, and I've also seen in like readings when I look up, you know, articles and other kind of media, that it is in these places, it's in countries like you know, Cuba, Venezuela, you understand, that you have a higher and more advanced degree of democracy taking place, where before policies are adopted by the government, you know, so many you know, committees and groups and organizations that represent the people, you know, are involved in all sorts of deliberations and so on, that these things aren't just adopted, you know, wholesale, you get, as imperialists would, you know, like lead us to believe. So like if even a form of that, you know, is taking place here in Africa, that's in the form of a more responsive government, be it military or civilian-led, as far as it is responding to the needs and wants of the masses of the people. You know, that's what we should be looking for, you get. when the time is right, as political consciousness arises, such governments will also still be held accountable for the ideology that they are putting. This one is just the responsibility of the people, you understand? That's why there are organizations like this, the ones you all are involved in, you get. It's also just a reminder of the responsibility that, it's not just about us being in these organizations, that going by the realities that are currently unfolding, we will come into like situations where our positions will have to be like held. We need to hold ideological ground, you understand, so that people that are observing, people that are involved will be aware of the real things that are going on. But let me just hold off there, Sha. I want to just move the all
Add
right,
something, because I think
all right.
getting to I just want to point out some of the hypocrisy in terms of the way the African Union as well as ECOWAS have treated Mali and Burkina Faso about this question of democracy. I mean, I'll talk about the African Union, which claims that, this sort of military leadership is not democratic. We're talking about a continent where there are multiple monarchies, including an absolute monarchy that's like operating in Africa right now. Nobody who's gonna, I would love for somebody to look me in the eyes and argue to me that Cameroon is a democratic state, or that Gabon or Togo are democratic states. These are not democratic states. I mean, who's gonna really argue that Paul Biya has been democratically elected for the past several decades? So, I mean, this whole fake concern about democracy, I just want to point out how just ridiculously sort of hypocritical it is in the way it's being employed and weaponized.
Yeah. That's true. The African, you know what? Let me just round this off. I want us to just speak on like security conditions, in this parts of the world as best as we can. The African Union, as we know, is hosting all sorts of peace missions, peacekeeping missions, and so on, and even the United Nations as well. And we also know AFRICOM, the United States military commander, is apparently governing the continent of Africa, is also, carrying out, operations. I'm speculating a little here, you understand, because of, larger context, and I'll make my point. Not too long after Operation Barkhane, that's the French military operation, I hope I'm correct. Not too long after it finished, and not too long after Mali requested that French troops leave, as well as the UN mission, MINUSMA, to leave as well. I also just started seeing in the news a new round of attacks, terrorist attacks, vulnerability, innocent citizens being killed in all sorts of fishy ways and all this kind of things, different numbers and so on. So I can't help but ignore, the history that we know of, the imperialists using local forces to kind of cause terror within governments that are should I say, resisting them or not towing their line. You get. So I don't necessarily have the facts, but it's just that the information available just has those lines, drawing across. So I would just like anybody who is interested to just speak on, the goings on of these security engagements, AFRICOM, UN peacekeeping forces that are not really doing what they are saying, they want to do, and even the French as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was June 30th that it was finally announced that MINUSMA is leaving Mali. So naturally, it's the day after, suddenly we start hearing that the insecurity has ramped up overnight since those blue helmets have peaced out. Which, it's we shouldn't be surprised by all this, right? They want to undermine the government. They want to make it seem like the Malian armed forces are not capable of securing the country, that we always are going to be dependent on these satanic institutions like the United Nations. But we know that's a lie. The FAMA are really tight right now. They are very well equipped. The Abdoulaye Diop always says, fear has switched camp. Now the terrorists, sponsored and created by the West, are now fearing the Malian armed forces, right? So I think this just ties into again, the question of the media that's like totally against us. And also, that's why I really appreciate Mali, because they are so good with the truth. Like, they never cease to remind us why Mali is in the state that it currently is. Like, every time Abdoulaye Diop, he reminds everybody, let's not forget, my country is facing all this insecurity because of the events that happened in Libya in 2011, when the imperialist camp linked up and destroyed Libya, and killed Gaddafi, right? So let's never forget what led to this kind of insecurity in Mali, but just the entire Sahel region, right? Like, the people who came and sponsored the terrorism are not also going to be the ones that are going to be like helping us fight the terrorism, right? Like, it just doesn't make any sense at all, y'all. Like, I know it sounds kind of scary, like, oh, the thought of like, oh, no more UN helping us with like maybe a bag of rice every month. Oh, maybe, I know it sounds scary that we're losing these things, but like, we can't possibly work with the enemy to defeat the enemy, right? And that's what the Malian government said. Like, we have to take responsibility for the security of our country on our own. Our armed forces can do it with the support of other anti-imperialist partners like Russia. I'll go and deal with it. Yes, like Russia and Iran and China. So this is the way to go. It's going to be tough, but liberation is meant to be tough.
So nobody said liberation is easy, man. Nobody said liberation is easy. Anybody preaching that type of thing is leading the people astray. Let's just get that one clear first. So yeah, it's really worrying. It's really worrying when we see like imperialist government, using the same pattern over and over again, and it seems like it wants to succeed because like people on the ground are still vulnerable to like the mechanics of, should I say, capitalism. You get, greed can still be exploited, desperation can still be exploited. You understand? So all maybe the State Department or any of their fishy groups, need to do. When I say State Department, I'm just referring to the United States Department. You get, since they are fomenting terrorism in most of the world today. But what I mean is that they can just approach like a middle manager in the government and then start funding all sorts of operations, which is where you see NGOs giving aid to terrorist groups. You get, I mean, that was in the news here in Nigeria. Nigeria has been operating as a kind of branch of global imperialism on Africa for the longest time. Even the Nigerian government, at some point, you get kicked out NGOs because they were caught giving support to like I would say it's the Boko Haram insurgents you get in the northeast of the country. You understand? So if a country like Nigeria is having that kind of issue, what more one that is against the let's say like French imperialism or American imperialism? Another thing that kind of worries me when I'm thinking about security within this part of the world is like the military bases that are hosted here. Like I think there's one in Niamey, a drone base in Niamey, one of the largest in the region. You get, what is a drone base doing in this in this part of the world? It's giving all sorts of surveillance to enemy forces. It's probably also carrying out strikes you get against the vulnerable groups, and it definitely won't be carried by mainstream media. You're not going to see any BBC cameras there. You're not going to see any goddamn CNN cameras there. You understand? So I will just leave this here for now because we're trying to focus on these two countries, Mali and Burkina Faso. So man, Comedine, I'll bring this question back to you now, and it's about Burkina Faso there on the ground, and it's just like what I would say, you've mentioned it before, but I'd just like you to expand a little, like the people's sentiment towards the Burkinabe government, because I don't have much knowledge about the structures there and so on. So if you could just enlighten us a little on what popular sentiment is, towards the Burkinabe government.
Okay. Well, I think it's interesting because you're talking about ways that imperialism tries to sort of penetrate local populations to create divisions and to sort of lead to the destabilization of governments. And I think one of the things that is so important to note here is that imperialism is losing and it's losing pretty badly right now. You know, there's efforts. The strategies and tactics in Mali and Burkina are pretty much the same. I mean, Mali and Burkina Faso have declared that they're en route to become one single state. And I think, you know, even though I'm sure sort of the imperialist agenda doesn't approve of that, for better or for worse, I think for maybe for better, they are treating us like one single state. If you look at sort of the way they're talking about the two countries and the sort of strategies. So everything they accuse Mali of, they pretty much accuse Burkina of as well. The ethnic tensions they try to put on Mali, they try to put on Burkina. But I just think it's remarkable because it's just like, if tomorrow there was to be some sort of intervention here, I genuinely believe that people would go out and risk their lives on the street to defend the state, to defend the progress that's being made. We are just in a place here where a lot, I think, of what other parts of the world are struggling with in terms of like what kind of direction do we want to go in? Not to say there's no ideological struggles here, but I think certain questions like what is our relationship to the Western countries? You know, what is this question of sort of multipolarity that's existing in the world right now? Where should we align ourselves? Like, these are questions that I think the masses of people in Burkina Faso have already sorted out for themselves. So if you walk around in Ouagadougou, for example, you know, you go to the market, you walk past stores, you'll see the Burkina Faso flag, you'll see the Malian flag. Then whether you like it or not, you're going to see the Russian flag, you'll see the Chinese flag, you'll see the North Korean flag. Sometimes you'll see like Cuba or maybe Venezuela as well. And these are things that are very exciting to people. People are really excited. You'll see Iran as well. Like, people are really excited to be making these sorts of collaborations. I think a lot of it, some of these sort of partnerships also really remind people of sort of the way Burkina Faso used to be positioned in the 80s. I think especially with the new diplomatic relationships with the DPRK, North Korea, like, it really signals to people sort of that close relationship that Sankara had. And so I think these are just things that people are excited about. And yeah, it's like when, for example, the imperialist media has accused both Mali and Burkina Faso of massacres against civilians and being implicated in that. And one of the things that people said when they took out to the streets was that they refused to allow this term of democracy to be used as a weapon of imperialism. I mean, that's almost an exact quote from a declaration that a local Pan-African group put out. It's probably not exact, but it's pretty close. And it's that, I think that's really where people are at. I think people are not really in a space right now where they're going to be easily swayed or manipulated or pushed around. You know, the efforts will persist, but I just think that, you know, we have reached at least a certain level of clarity on the ground where we understand that the Western countries, the NATO countries, are our enemies. We understand that there's no potential for us to have any sort of close relationship with France. And it was really an anti-French movement, but it's become an anti-NATO movement, which I just think is so important. It's this hyper focus on France is shifting. And so it's really become, okay, France plus the United States and all of the NATO countries, like that's not the camp we're in. We don't want close relationships with them. We don't want them on our soil. Like, we are, you know, we have that sort of clarity here. I hope Burkina Faso goes in the direction of Mali in terms of the NGO funding, because we know that is the NGO funding that's oftentimes used, you know, with these sort of ideological sort of conditions tied to it, that, you know, it slowly but surely tries to, you know, they start with like what it kind of sort of common agreement they might be able to have, and they slowly start to like put in their agenda and push it in a certain way. I don't think right now it's a big threat, but I think that we do need to address the NGO question the way Mali did so clearly, so that this doesn't become an issue in the future.
Okay. You see, this, I mean, all out, it's just good news. It's just good news that I've been hearing. You get all these developments, you get on the positive side, and it is really important that people are made aware of this kind of developments. You know, we should remember on the continent that this neo-colonial leaders and governments that we have running things right now, they aren't the only option. Like, the options they give us as citizens aren't the only way to go. You understand? We should seek to make these things work for ourselves. And I'll, you know, say it, and I'll keep saying it again. It's good that we have two countries such as Mali and Burkina Faso, you understand, making things happen in this way, you get. But one more question before I just move on to our other guests. You mentioned a while ago you were in communication with people from Cuba. So is that something you can talk about?
Yeah, sure. Like, so I can just say, yeah, like in the Thomas Sankara Center here, we've done some like collaboration with the Cuban embassy, and so we've been we've been developing a relationship with the Cuban Chargé d'Affaires and the Cuban embassy.
Your audio just dropped.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
I was just
you're clear.
saying that we have some relationship. The Thomas Sankara Center here has some relationship with the Cuban embassy, and so we do some events with the Cuban embassy.
Okay. I mean, you see, this is the thing about, I want to say internationalism. You understand? When governments, and people are aligned in some way, connection is easy, connection is seamless. You get, and aside from seeing Cuba like do what they do with their medical professionals, you get, where they practically export them to give help to other people. Hearing that the organization you're with gets has had connections and interactions with the Cuban government in a way. I mean, that's also it's a different level of support, and yeah, kudos to all the work people are doing, over there.
That's because they're doing revolutionary work. We need to hype up the Thomas Sankara Center way more. These are real life revolutionaries. Like, I know we love revolution in books, but like, we have living, working revolutionaries organizing in Africa. And the Cuban embassy is not like chilling around them because for no reason. It's because they're effective and they're doing real work.
Yes.
So kudos to them.
Yes.
Burkina
Sure.
Faso is ready, I think, we are just we've reached a certain point here, and so I think sometimes we talk about Pan-Africanism as like some distant future thing, and yes, it's an intergenerational struggle. Like, I understand, it's a long-term thing, the struggle continues, it's a process, I agree, but like, we also have to sometimes recognize when the moment is right, when the people are ready for like some real concrete, long-term, permanent organizing and action, and to really affect change. And that's really where we're at in Burkina, and I will say in the Sahel region of this continent.
Yeah. That's true. Comrade Obioma, will you come in? Do you have any comments to make on this?
Not on this in particular.
Can I just say something? Because I want Obi to address a question that was in the chat, because Obi will answer this really well. Someone asked, what are your guys' thoughts on Russia's role in the region? And I'm just like, Obi should answer.
Carry on.
So, I mean, I think there are a lot of important things to consider. One, Russia was asked by the people in these regions to be in the regions. So in some regard, it doesn't matter what I think about it. It's like, what do people on the ground think about it? And people on the ground see, first of all, they understand that NATO is the premier imperialist power in the world. And so if you look at the country that's been most effective fighting imperialism militarily, it'll be Russia. Russia, we've seen they're fighting NATO forces in Ukraine. Russia assisted Syria when NATO was trying to take them out. So they've also assisted Venezuela militarily when the US was trying to interfere with the Venezuelan process. So, I mean, there are also other examples. I mean, even Putin said, just a sleight of hand, that he wished that they were able to assist Libya when the US attacked them. Russia is a premier fighter against imperialism militarily. So in that regard, like, if you are fighting imperialism, you would want to unite with other people who have experienced fighting imperialism. I mean, that's how you do it. So Russia has internal contradictions, of course, but that doesn't mean that they are not effective fighting imperialism. I mean, so even the Malian government accused France, as we said, of like basically dropping weapons to the terrorists to go fight the military. I mean, and this isn't unknown. Like we saw it in Syria. We also see it in Haiti with the gangs. Like these gangs are backed by Western forces. Like they don't produce guns in Haiti like that. So where are they getting these weapons? It's of course the U.S. I think in that regard, one, a lot of what we know about Russia, we know from Western media, and as Prince said, Western media lies all the time. So I guess we should disabuse ourselves of this idea that Russia is like this other force that is out to get Africans as well. Russia has their interests, which can align with African interests, and when they do, I think that's a great thing, and we should support those who
Period.
are fighting imperialism.
It's clear like that. It's clear like that because like these governments, let's say Mali, the Central African Republic, in other countries that Russia has a security cooperation deals with, you know, people will tend to make the criticism that, you know, Russia is like doing the same thing that let's say like the United States, France, you know, Germany or the UK are doing on the continent, but they don't bring in the fact that these governments, let's say like Mali, for example, you get like these defense partnerships are important, you know, and all that is required at that point is somebody who can fill that gap on a practical level. You understand? I mean, as we know, these governments have their own interests, and you know that's not to be brushed off. You know, but the thing is, what is Mali doing to defend itself against Western media? You understand, and so on. And we can also see this just came into my mind when it comes to like insecurity in the Sahel region. You know, multiple heads of states, including the previous one of Nigeria, you get, they all raised alarm that weapons from the Russia-Ukraine conflict are being funneled into the Sahel region. You understand? So we're now seeing a situation where two countries on the other side of the world are, racking it out and dealing damage to each other. Then in Africa here, the black market, the weapons black market is booming. And we can also see that whole line, that's like a weapons trade, black market weapons trade in the region. They didn't just start from nowhere. There was a serious increase when NATO destroyed the government of Libya. You understand? So all these things are connected in a very way. Community Obioma, thanks for bringing that up. Another thing.
Sorry.
Okay.
I believe that Russia is just as bad as the NATO countries. Once I see Russia orchestrating coup d'etats in Africa, once I see declassified documents saying that Russia has rigged our elections, once Russia creates a Russian franc that they're going to install in 14 countries in Africa, their own currency, they'll be like, yeah, Russia is just as bad. But I think until that happens, I think it's safe to say that there's definitely a more evil power than Russia.
I mean, you get, we have to point these things out, because that I don't mean to focus too much away from the continent, but that government on its own does. I mean, Russia in itself, it's also fighting for its survival in a way. You understand? Billions of dollars are streaming in from Euro-Atlantic countries, and they are also looking for partnerships. You get, so this is not a one-sided thing, and people really need to move away from that thought process of not giving or allowing African countries any sense of autonomy. You understand? These leaders in place are also able to make decisions for or against their people. And what I mean by that is, we have our new colonial examples, people that are just doing nonsense, and we have, two examples in Burkina Faso and Mali of people that are trying to do the right thing. You get, so something caught my attention in the comments here, and Obi, I think this one is back at you as well, saying BAP. Obi, I think that has to do with the Black Alliance for Peace. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
wonder if you could just speak, because I'm aware of the organization and the serious work they are doing, in Western Hemisphere. So I wonder if you could just say stuff of, what's going on, activities, and just enlighten us on stuff that is going on.
Yeah, so the BAP is the Black Alliance for Peace. It does a lot of political education work and a lot of political, I guess, just outreach. It also has the U.S. Out of Africa Network, which is kind of a working group within it. It does, in addition, they've also been doing a lot of great work around AFRICOM. So AFRICOM is the African Central Command. The U.S., as imperialist powers would do, has divided the world into different commands. Um, AFRICOM being the African Command. There's also commands for Asia and Latin America, and it's basically a way of the U.S. trying to divide the world to control the world. So Black Alliance for Peace has done a lot of important work highlighting AFRICOM in Africa, which is essentially U.S.'s attempts to recolonize in another name of Africa. I think one thing that's also interesting to note is that getting back to this idea of instability, we've also seen instability ramping up as as the U.S. has become more and more involved in Africa. I think so. I'm forgetting the study, but there was a study that documented like the correlation between these two. So I think it's important that the best way to fight instability is for the U.S. to be out of Africa, the U.S. to be out of everywhere, and also ending sanctions, right? Because sanctions are also driving conditions. The point of sanctions are really to punish the population until they overthrow the government. This is the U.S.'s strategy, always about sanctions. So we need to, so sanctions kill, and we need to end sanctions. Since I'm on instability, another driver of instability is climate change. As the climate changes, people's lives are affected, and that can cause more conflict. So we need to think about this holistically as well.
Yeah. You just, I mean, it's as if any discussions about geopolitics and development, around the world itself is almost not complete on, when you haven't referred to, climate change, you get, and that whole concept. Now, because the thing is, when it comes to like when we're looking at the propaganda that all these NGOs put out about developments and effects of the climate and so on different parts of the world, it's always very confusing because you're not explaining any of those sciences to the farmer that just lost their harvest. You understand? You're also not explaining like any of those sciences like let's say desertification and so on to like the family whose house just collapsed. You understand? So even these developments, so there's like, I wonder if it's a class thing. You understand? But there's definitely like the perspectives that don't align properly. You understand? When let's say like imperialists in the West are trying out all their support programs and development programs for we Africans that need it so much, they will come with all these kind of narratives that don't really serve anybody on the ground. It still just moves with that tactic they use through either religion and so on to pierce into different communities. You get to still continue suppressive tactics and so on. So yeah, it's always important to point out these different things, man. But for now, I really just want to thank you all for the time that you've even made out to have this conversation. You get, we'll be winding down soon. I just wanted to bring up something that interested me. I mean, just in line with, if we're aware of recent news that is going on, unfortunately, a young child was murdered in France, and most of the country now is looking for what to burn and what to break. You get, which is, I mean, I don't know how much of an issue I have with that, Sha, but I don't know what you people's comments. I don't know what you people's comments are, about the recent developments in France. And then I'll ask Inem another question about Burkina Faso.
Can we just quickly address your comments on development? Because I think we need to stop talking about development. Like, Africa's occupied. Don't talk to me about no development with like AFRICOM stationed here. We need to be talking about first freeing the land.
Yeah,
Like we entertain a lot of nonsense conversations sometimes. Like, we don't need to be talking about development. We need to talk about anti-imperialism, like the end of foreign occupation. Like, we're not gonna develop with the enemy, right? That's just a
yeah, yeah,
sidebar.
yeah,
Yeah, France is burning, but like France kind of burns every 6 weeks. If you guys like genuinely look at that country, like those people, like the country's burning every 6 weeks. Like this is what they always do. And I don't know, like I just feel like it's not very organized because they just burn it down, sit down, go back to eating baguettes, and then someone gets shot because they will get shot. And then they go back to burning. Like, all of that energy is not really kind of taken into like an organized kind of direction. It's just angry children, which they should be. And I'm all for burning. Go ahead. But like, can we also maybe look to Africa? Can we question why it's burning? Why is it burning? It's not just like police violence. You're in France. Of course, Africans are going to get shot down in France. They're shooting you down back home. Why are they not going to shoot you down in France? So I just think that, the Pan-Africanists and the socialists or the whatever in France just need to be a bit more organized and just take all that energy and like sit everybody down and figure out like, okay, why are we getting shot down? Like, what's France's relationship to us historically? What's happening in Africa? Your answer to what's happening in France is happening in Mali and Burkina Faso right now. You want them to stop shooting you down in France. You need to be linking up with movements that are currently against French imperialism and the general imperialism. So I've seen a lot of people being like, wow, we need to get like France. No, because we don't need to be just like burning things down every 6 weeks. We need people to be joining organizations and to be doing things in an organized manner. Y'all, burning things down is very easy. Sitting down and going to work study every 2 weeks is not easy. So I just think folks need to be pushed into revolutionary organizing, and people need to be pushed to kind of like, I'm all about like against the police. That's a good starter, but you can't end there. We need to go from against the police to against imperialism. Like it needs to, like, it's not moving forward. Hence why every 6 weeks these people are protesting.
That's
yes, yes, yes,
such a
yes.
good point. And I just want to add a little because I decided, I really don't like being on calls where people talk about Pan-Africanism and then there's no definition. So I really think it's going to push us so much further as a people worldwide, wherever we are, whether we're Algerians in France who are being attacked by the police, or we're Africans in Ouagadougou struggling against imperialism, or if we're in Nigeria or in the snakes, which is what we call the United States, United Snakes, or if we're in Canada or elsewhere. I think we need to have a clear objective. I think we need to understand that Pan-Africanism is the total liberation and unification of Africa under scientific socialism, and that if we have that definition and if we have that clear objective, then we'll understand that until Africa is free, no African anywhere in the world will ever be free or respected. I feel like this is something that needs to be like repeated constantly and really made clear, because sometimes, the conversations can be a bit like nebulous or vague, or we don't know what we're fighting for, and we're using these terms and then they're getting co-opted or used to mean this or that. I think we need to be very clear, like Pan-Africanism is an objective. It's an objective that requires that Africa is liberated, unified, and also socialist, and that we're going to keep fighting against the police and our own little corners, like until time immemorial, and until we actually start to really think about what it means to develop power, which comes from the liberation of land, and our land is Africa. And so if that poor boy teenager in France was living during a time when Africa was liberated and unified under socialism, then the United States of Africa, or whatever we would like to call a unified African state, would go and like defend this young teenager who is in France and who was just killed, who is an African from Algeria. But we have no defense. And so we keep being sort of perpetually shocked and stunned that, oh my God, they're treating us so badly. I mean, they are organized. They have like unified NATO. We're living under pan-Europeanism. When are we going to have our own power? When are we going to start building a unified state? And I think this really ties into Burkina Faso and Mali as well, because it's not just that we're making anti-imperialist partnerships around the world, which is important, but we're also addressing this question of Pan-Africanism in the sense of a federal United States of Africa. And how can we build that? And that's a huge question. And it's like stunning to be in like like I don't even have the words. It's hard for me to think of it in terms of how I feel to be in a place where something like that's even on the table, where like leaders can sit down with each other and discuss and say, our people are calling for a federal United States of Africa. How can we build it? I mean, this is just like, this is like the most important thing. And Mali and Burkina Faso are making that step.
This is serious. Completely agree with everything you guys have said. We always need to remind ourselves. We always need to remind ourselves what the objective is, because if we don't do so, like we can, for lack of a better term, just like get lost in the struggle. You understand, and lose sight of the bigger picture. So yeah, thanks for all you guys have said, man. Omo, recently I found that demonstrations are being called for the French ambassador to leave Burkina Faso, and also like a French cultural center was, attacked. I don't mean to, I don't mean to harp on this, you understand, but I mean it's always in a grim way. It's always kind of amusing when French establishments are being taken down so by angry Africans and stuff. I'm all for that. So I wonder if you have any comments on recent developments around like demonstrations against like French diplomats in Burkina Faso or something like that.
Well, you said that there were demonstrations to kick out the French ambassador. I just want to clarify that at one point the French ambassador was kicked out, Luc Alad. This was earlier this year. So the government did force the former French ambassador to leave. And, Burkina Faso has also severed its military relationship with France as well. Burkina Faso has also banned Radio France International at RFI, France 24, or like France 24. And just today, there's like another French imperialist media outlet,
LCI. LCI.
Thank you. I
don't know what it means. I don't really care myself.
But also, again, like just today, this is also being announced that Burkina Faso has suspended this channel as well. So yeah, and this is also something that is popular on the ground here. I mean, people are already like most people are skeptical of these outlets, if not outright, have negative feelings towards them. And so these are all popular moves. Like I said, there's widespread anti-French sentiment. People burn the French flags. People France is considered like this demonic, diabolical country. But like I said, what's even more important is that it's becoming an anti-NATO struggle. And so like it's moving, it's developing in a direction where now more and more people are you'll see people not just with like an Abat la France, like down with France sign, but like Abat l'OTAN, like down with NATO, and they'll cross out the French flag and the US flag, and like people are starting to understand that we as Africans are living during the era of pan-Europeanism, where these powers are unified and they're able to attack African countries in at least a somewhat unified type of way, while we're all fighting at our own corners. And it's sad. And you also mentioned earlier, I want to just say, like, Operation Burkina, which was the French military operation that was operating in Mali. It's really not over. It just moved. Like, okay, they still have like illegal sort of, they're still like illegally operating in Mali in certain ways. And the Malian government is very clear about how France is violating their terms and operating illegally even after they've been kicked out. But like also, Operation Burkina just moved to Niger. So they are still looking, to have their base and their power in the Sahel. You mentioned that Niger has a massive military base in Agadez, which is the second biggest in Africa. I think, I don't know, I just think that we need to start, we have a long struggle ahead of us. I think that Mali and Burkina Faso are leading the way, especially on this question of federation. But it's a sad reality that there can be something in the world like NATO, which operates sort of under this sort of touch one, touch all type of mentality, or one of us attacks one of you, we all attack one of you type of mentality. And then meanwhile, we can have something like Boko Haram operating in Nigeria for like I don't know how many decades it's been now. It's been well over a decade. Operating in Nigeria, and then Mali, we're fighting terrorism. Burkina, we're fighting terrorism. And where's our collaboration? Why is it like every African state for itself? I mean, why is like the Horn of Africa fighting in their corner, and then with the Sahel we're fighting in our corner, and then Nigeria is like out fighting in their corner? We have a long way of going towards building this concrete unity. But I think that Burkina and Mali are really examples of what we should be doing. They kicked out the imperialists, and the first thing that they moved to do once they kick out the imperialists is sit down and say, how can we unify? We have kicked out the imperialists operating, at least militarily. The economic and monetary question is on the table. I think it's going to be coming soon, but at least we've gotten them off of our soil for now. How are we going to unify? I think this is a really, really important piece.
Yes. Your comment now just lines up with a question that people are asking in the comments, and I'll just leave this one open. You get, Inem, you mentioned something about the unification, and if I remember correctly, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Guinea. Yes, they had started talks about some kind of federation also. So yeah, one thing going on in the comments now is that people will just want to know just any kind of information about what's going on with Guinea, and then as also this federation. So I'll leave it for anybody now.
But the Guinea they're mentioning is Guinea-Bissau, not the Guinea that was originally invited to the federation is Guinea-Conakry, by the way. The different Guinea.
That's my bad. Okay, but still, are there any comments about the correct Guinea Conakry?
Please.
Yeah.
No,
So go on.
Obi, please
No,
carry on.
So there were recent elections in Guinea-Bissau where the PAIGC was able to went through the electoral process. I mean, they really just were elected in. But I think that this is an important development still. So if we remember last year, there were attacks on the PAIGC headquarters in Guinea-Bissau. Am I doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 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 So I think in this regard, there is hope that there can be more alliances with so one of the ideas of this federation is that we don't want to just keep it at 2 or 3 states, right? We want this federation to continue to grow. And I think as more governments that are elected or take power that are responsive to the people, I think we'll see this federation go. I think one of the things that has also been growing across Africa and across Africans around the world is there's a growing desire for unity, right? There's a growing desire for us to come together. We're seeing places go up, right? Like just now in France, they killed they killed a teenager. They killed one here in the U.S. They're doing the same thing. We have the same problems all around the world. So I think we're looking to that, and as Inem was saying, like we need to, since we have similar problems, we need to start thinking about how do we come together to make a similar solution.
Yeah. This is good, and thanks for that update. So as it is right now, I would just, on this thing about unity, ECOWAS is not pulling its weight. ECOWAS is currently just also acting as a larger extension of oppression of the African continent. Nigeria and a couple others were among the first to jump and approve sanctions to Mali when they triggered their coup. You understand? So that one was also a disgrace. this federation now that is, in the starting stages. I mean, it's the type of thing that holds the potential to render, some of these regional bodies like just illegitimate, because as it is right now, they're just operating as economic collaborations to extract wealth from Africa. You understand? In form of finances, in the form of natural resources and so on. I mean, over in the East, we have the East African community, and they haven't been able to like put together any kind of a delegation that can address the conflict that is going on in Sudan. You understand? So similar thing in the South. I mean, Rwanda and Uganda have been doing one kind of strategy to just destabilize, Congo, with U.S. backing, of course, and nothing else, is being said about that. As I said, here in the West, ECOWAS is not, is not taking a defensive posture in favor of Mali or Burkina Faso. I don't even have much to say about the North, because that one now, that region now is just operating like some kind of extension of like Arabian, power and so on, and that's highly unimpressive. Yeah, those are other things that will need to be addressed in this development and unification towards, Pan-Africanism. There's this Pan-Africanist unification towards like socialist, governance. These are the things that we would have to address at some point. Might not be at the top of the board right now, but it will have to be confronted. So yeah, I mean, again, much gratitude to all of you for just sharing your time you get, and coming on this live, to give serious information, to let people know where things are right now on the continent in these two important countries. So as it is right now, let's just give out our final comments, and also just consider letting people know how they can either get in touch, collaborate, network, how we can grow these things, you get, because I believe at this point we are part of like some kind of, like I'll say we're part of like a kind of media strategy that plays a role in like educating people and letting people know what's going on actually from actual people, you get, that are aware of this subject. So I would I would like Inem to go first, then Prudence and Obioma can follow up after that.
Okay. I just want to encourage people to join an organization that's fighting for African liberation, that's fighting for Pan-Africanism, which, as I mentioned before, is the total liberation and unification of Africa under scientific socialism, to get some political education, as much as you can. Hopefully you can be part of an organization that has a political education process or structure embedded into it. I'm a member of the All African People's Revolutionary Party, which any African anywhere in the world can join. So definitely check out the website, apairedpnational.org, if you're interested. And then I'm also in the Thomas Sankara Center for African Liberation and Unity. We are based on the ground here in Ouagadougou. We are entirely supported by just donations of like individuals and organizations that want to be, how do we say, like camaraderie. I feel like there's a better word, camaraderie. With us, like we want to express their solidarity. So please, if you have any way of support, we have a Patreon. We also have a GoFundMe that we use to advance our work and our struggle. And please check out the Instagram page. We have a Facebook page, which can be found in the link in bio. So follow our work. And we are trying also just to connect people around the world with the struggle here in Burkina Faso, because I think a lot of imperialism, like a lot of their strategy, sort of relies on this idea that you're never going to hear from somebody in Burkina Faso. You're never going to hear from the organizers that are there, or the Africanists, or the socialists, or the communists, or the imperialists who are based in Burkina Faso. I think they really rely, or sort of just assume that the language barrier is just going to block out all information, and that they can kind of get away with saying whatever they want, but that's not the case. So I encourage you to check out our work, and you can hear more of our perspectives and different perspectives on the ground here.
Yeah, solid. That's nice. Prudence, please.
Okay, I have two parting comments. The first one is that we need to remember that Pan-Africanism is a grassroots movement. It will be starting from the bottom upwards. I think a lot of us tend to think like one day all of our presidents will sit down and be like, let us unite. It's never gonna happen like that. You guys, like literally never. It's people like us. It's like people like your mom and your grandma and your cousins who need to do these people to people relationships and build Pan-Africanism and our unification that way. The onus is on us, everyday people, to build Pan-Africanism, not on anybody else. And then my second comment is to the African diaspora, because I know quite a few of you logged in are out west. You need to move resources back home. Your massive book collection does not matter as much as you sending money to ENAM to buy a massive book collection for the center. We have to be very clear on the need for money to move to build Pan-Africanism, and the diaspora has to understand that you need to move resources back home. We don't talk about money, but we need to normalize talking about money, and the diaspora, you have a big role to play in that. That's all for me.
All right, nice one. Obioma, please.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to go along with the idea of we need our unity to be grassroots. And just because we also see this development of like an African free trade zone, and that's not necessarily the call that the people are wanting. And a free trade zone, it could end up resembling something more like the European free trade zone, the EU, where we're seeing it's just run by technocrats, and it's an undemocratic institution. So we have to be clear that we want unity, and that's why the definition of Pan-Africanism, which is the total unification and liberation of Africa under scientific socialism, we need to be clear that that's the Pan-Africanism that we're looking for. And then also to echo and join the organization fighting for liberation of our people. So AAPRP, Movement for African Emancipation. If you're out west, you can join that. Just if there's no organization near you and you have some ideas, start your own, join with your people, and we need to be organized to be liberal, period.
Nice one. Nice one, nice one. You guys are the best, man. Thanks for all this. Thanks for the knowledge. Thanks for the time. Thanks for the energy and all the information. So yes, as I hope listeners now understand that all this doesn't end in talk. You get, we all are in our own different ways in organizations that are struggling towards, the liberation of Africa, the unification of this continent, Africa. You understand, under scientific socialism. You get, this is how we are going to confront and defeat all those who have listed themselves as enemies of, African progress. We have to keep our mind right. We have to keep our ideology right, and all these things are very important. So I wish you all good health, safe lives, and take it easy and then carry on. I hope we can find time to have this kind of grouping again. Take care.
For sure. Bye, Africans.
Thank you. Peace, comrade.
Thanks. All right. I will be ending this.